All right, we are back. Episode 4, SSP Pod. We got a good topic today. We want to talk about preseason training. Um, Something that maybe gets thrown around a lot again, and we just want to kind of peel back the curtain a little bit and talk about some of the adjustments that we are making here at the gym with our training and kind of the programming that we're designing, knowing that. Let's see, today we are filming this on January 26th, so we are like 4.5, 5 weeks out from tryouts starting. So, when we as coaches kind of sit back at the beginning of our off season and kind of plan out the programming for the entire stretch of off season, I don't know about you, Alex, but this is one of my more like one of my favorite parts to put together. Yeah, the first block might be a bunch of general GPP, and the second block maybe we're trying to work on strength and build muscle, so hypertrophy, strength, stuff like that. And then as we start to get a little bit closer to the season, we transition into to some movements and some strategies that are a little bit more demanding as far as like speed output, power output goes, understanding that at the end of the day, we're training athletes, right? And with tryouts right around the corner, we need to make sure that they are ready and fully equipped to step right into those tryout sessions, right into their season, and be, physically ready to go. So we'll discuss that in a little more detail as we go, but that's kind of what we have on the sheet today for what we want to talk about.
Definitely.
Yeah. So like I said, we're transitioning the guys right now. We have like 5 weeks or so until we get into the tryout season, and then we'll transition them again to more of a in-season training protocol. We've been coming off of 2-3 blocks. So for us, each block is 4 weeks. So that's like an 8 to 12 week stretch where we have been we've been going hard as far as intensities and as far as volume, right? We have been making sure that our guys are moving heavy loads. We have been making sure that their strength numbers are where they need to be. We have been making sure that, the guys who need to put on weight are right on track to their goals for weight gain and that they are ready to go. And now, as we've been doing this for the last week or two, but we're starting to transition guys away from some of the more like heavy intensities or loads and bring in some things that might have a little bit more of like reactivity component. Some things where we are, utilizing our the different tools that we have to measure bar speed, and really kind of shifting our goalposts from loads moved to speed of those loads moved, right?
Yeah, no, and really the entire time we're trying to like when we're going through every phase, everything's so cyclical, right? With everything that we do. And we only get a certain amount of time of the year where we're able to actually like push the envelope where we get to have a higher volume and a higher intensity at the same time. And we're just really starting to get out of that phase, right? And, as we, keep getting closer to season and their um their sport skills that they're working on, the amount of time they're doing that is increasing more and more with practice and tryouts and all that stuff coming up. We really got to begin to transition to prepare them for all of that stuff, right? And like you said, the last 3 or 4 weeks, or 3 or 4 months rather, we've been doing a lot more volume and a very high intensity, right? And now we're starting to shift, like you're saying, the intensity from a pure strength focus or hypertrophy focus to the intensity being like, all right, we're trying to move the trap bar at a 1.0 meters per second, or our Viking press at a 1.8 meters per second, even. Um, where I was saying the intensity isn't necessarily, gotta lift all this weight as, just lift it, right? And it's a slow
Yeah.
movement to more of I gotta lift at whatever speed and whatever weight I can get to is the weight I can get to. And there's a certain amount of like daily readiness that we kind of look for with all that stuff too, because if we're chasing a speed rather than a weight, you know, everyone's daily readiness changes and their ability to get to that speed with a certain weight changes based off of how they're doing that day. And that's kind of a way we can regulate that too as we're getting closer and closer to the season and we don't want to burn them out and we don't want to hit a plateau or start moving in the wrong direction, right? Um, but yeah, a lot of our stuff right now is just like pick that freaking bar up and move it as fast as you can. Or,
Right.
our sprinting has changed a little bit too, right? Where we're starting to get a
Hmm.
little more, curved linear sprints rather than just straight linear sprints. We're adding a little bit more, components with that. And like you're saying too, with our next phase, we're working along that entire curve, that speed strength curve that, we always look at and we always kind of revert back to, right? You can have pure strength, you can have pure speed, and along the entire curve, there's the pure strength, strength, speed, power, speed, strength, straight speed. And we were at pure strength, then we were at strength, speed. Now we're kind of in between the power, speed, strength. I'd say we're more in the power phase with this part of our preseason, training. And then, this next card will be more, hey, let's go speed, strength. Because a lot of their skill work that they're doing outside of this too is almost more just pure speed anyways,
Right.
right?
Right. I want to jump back because you made a lot of good points in there. I want to talk for a second about how we kind of devise our workloads that we put on the guys or the athletes when they come in, right? So it's kind of like a sliding scale. We have athletes that train year round. Okay, so if you want to start in the in season kind of protocols with our guys when we were working with them, sports skill obviously priority number one, right? And is going to take up the majority of their time. So us, as far as the intensities and kind of we kind of call it like, can we put the guys down or not right now, right? So when they're in season, obviously on-field performance is high, and our ability to like quote put them down or really put them through the ringer is way down. We don't want to do that at all, right? We don't want to create soreness. We want to still create adaptation and keep their training moving, but we don't want to really thrash them, right? When we get into the summer and their schedules are still like really intense, really busy from the sports side, but maybe they don't have to worry about school in the summer, or they might have a little bit more free time. Those kind of levers that we play with, or those levels, might come a little bit closer. And then with baseball and the emergence of fall ball and travel fall ball, it kind of stays in that summer mode, right? Where we can get after it a little bit more than maybe in the spring as far as when we're programming, but we still know that these guys might be out on a weekend playing 4 or 5 games, or maybe they even have some midweek responsibilities with practices and things like that. So it's still not like true off season. So kind of going back to what you were talking about with that, like the true off season that we get, those 2 to 3 months are those that are in between, maybe it's 3 to 4 months, are in between ending of fall ball and beginning of season. So we're coming up on the tail end of that right now. And when we're in that mode, a lot of the guys take a little bit of time after fall ball. So sports stuff is like way down here. Maybe they're not doing anything for a couple weeks. Maybe some guys are still throwing a little bit or hitting. But then we can really ramp up our side, right? So we know that if there is a time to kind of quote put them down again, or whatever we want to call that, create some soreness that we're not that concerned about, that's the time. And now, as team practices are getting close to starting, I know we see and we're hearing the amount of baseball work or sports specific work that's going on, hitting, throwing. Maybe there's even some conditioning that's going on through their schools or something like that. We start to taper down a little bit, right? And so now we're kind of at this maybe like equilibrium, and then once we hit the beginning of March and tryouts start, it flips again, and it's all about the sport, and we are just holding on here. So again, we're always kind of messing with these levers and making sure that we're understanding the responsibilities of our guys when they're out of here, so we can match that to what we do in here, right? Um, and then I also wanted to touch on the differences in our speed work, like you said. Now so we've been just grinding away with some of our like linear work, right? We want them to get their feels almost, like quasi track work for a long time, right? Straight line. Let's make sure that their acceleration technique is dialed, their top speed technique is dialed, trying to really kind of whittle some time off of their speeds. And now we're opening some of those sprints up, so it's not just straight line work, right? You talked about the curvilinear stuff. I really think that is good from an athletic standpoint, and obviously the population that we serve, baseball, softball, they're constantly working on like those kind of curvilinear angles, right? Or I guess not angle, but those like rounded sprints. Okay. And these guys need to understand how they should be approaching that, how they should be attacking that. And from just a very like generalistic perspective, they need to understand that rarely are they running in a straight line, right? So not only do we put some curve sprints in, but we might do some like change of direction type speed work, trying to kind of take these things that we had in separate buckets, blending them together now to hopefully get these guys ready for all the different requirements of a tryout of their season.
Yeah, and there's always a balancing act, like what you're kind of talking about with everything that we're doing. And I mean, to circle back to to what you were saying about the, spring season to summer season to fall season, those times of the year, right? We're trying to really play a balancing act during the spring season, right? I know a general rule of thumb, I know we've talked about this a little bit, is the least amount of things that get a good stimulus, right? So the least amount that gets something, right? That's what we're going for. We're not going for something that'll put them into a giant hole like what you like, because that's not our goal during that time of the year, right? We're not trying to put them into a recovery deficit where they can't perform on the field, because I know, I think your dad was the one that would really talk about this for us. He's like, the best quality you can have is your availability to play. And if we're taking your availability to play at the highest level you can out of the equation during the in-season training phase, we're not doing our jobs correctly, right? And, I know this and you know this. In-season training is really, really important. And it is imperative that you continue doing at least something, right? And because we work so hard, with the athletes, and the athletes work so hard in the off season to make these strides and make these gains, right? And when we get in the in season, and if they just cut cold turkey, right? I know speed is a 5-day plus or minus 2-day quality that can be impacted in a negative way. If you don't train it 5 days plus or minus 2 days, so about a week or so, you're going to lose some speed quality, right? And then maximal strength is another thing. If you don't train maximal strength about once every quote unquote 30 days, plus or minus, 7 days or something like that, you're going to lose some maximal strength. And so when we get into our in season block, we're trying to do the least amount to get something out of it, so we can at least maintain at the very least what we work so hard during this off season phase and in our preseason phase. And then when we get to the summertime, like what you were talking about, they don't have like the school component of it, right? So they don't have that added stress and added scheduling of school. They might still have the added, the stuff with games and practices and stuff like that, but a lot of it is more games and practices in the summer. And we're able to kind of push the envelope a little bit more because they have less overall stresses in their life that'll put them in a hole. And right. I know fall is a little bit more of a, that one's kind of a tough little time of the year, right? Because we want to start pushing the envelope a little bit, because a lot of the athletes we work with, they have a pretty young training age, or maybe they're at an intermediate training age where they can, their neuromuscular pathways are pretty well established with their main lifts and how they sprint and that type of stuff, right? But they're not anywhere near what they could be from a physical standpoint. And in the fall, that's when we're trying to start to like ramp back up. So then when we do get to that off season period, it's not like, hey, you've been doing very, very minimal, and then hey, you've got volume accumulation for your trap bar deadlift, week one, and it just puts you through the floor, right? We
Right.
got to try to. There's such a balancing act, like what I'm kind of just talking about, and how different times of the year really call for different focuses, and you know, as a middle school and a high school athlete, and even a college athlete, you have to be really good about understanding where you are on a physical standpoint. If you are underdeveloped physically, probably going to a bunch of showcases and stuff like that isn't necessarily the best idea, in my opinion, because you aren't you're not able to put the best possible product out there for yourself. And by taking the time and spending time getting in the weight room and with your skills coaches and grinding, you're able to raise that floor and raise that ceiling like we talk about so many times. And then when you do get in front of those coaches for these showcases and these camps and for these tournaments, you're able to give the best version of yourself at that moment and keep getting better and better and better, right? Because you can do all the pitching work you want and all the hitting work you want and all of that type of stuff, but if you don't increase a lot of the physical qualities that we take care of, that we do in the weight room, all the mechanical work will only do so much, right?
Right.
And that's where what we do is really, really important. I know I kind of got a little bit off topic there a little bit, or maybe further down a pathway for all that, but that was kind of the main thing that kind of came to my head right there.
No, but that we didn't really plan on going here, and maybe we don't want to dive too deep into it. But that showcase question, I know is one we as coaches field a ton, right? We always are getting questions about what the athlete should be doing to get on coaches' radars out there, right? So there's the showcase world, there's the camp world, there's all that stuff. And I think basically what it boils down to, and then we can move back on topic a little bit, is like you just want to have stuff to showcase when you go to a showcase, right? You want to have been putting in the work, so when you go there, something is going to pop, whether it's your 60-yard dash, whether it's your velo from the outfield, whether it's your exit velo with the bat, velo across the infield, all those kind of showcasing measurables, whether it's, velo off the bump. You need to have something that is going to kind of separate you from the pack. And that's kind of how you open some eyes and all of a sudden open some of these pathways to conversation with some of these schools, whether they're area schools or regional schools or schools on a nationwide level, right? And I know that can be a really overwhelming thing for some of our guys that we when we talk to them and their parents, because colleges are still feeling the effects of the guys who went through COVID. Okay, hopefully in the next year or so we'll be out of that world, but that has changed the game a little bit for athletes. Transfer portal, NIL has changed the game for athletes a lot as far as high school guys trying to go straight into a 4-year situation. And even junior college guys out there are feeling the effects of transfer portal, NIL type things, right? So the game is adjusting or changing or evolving or whatever kind of a word you want to use to describe it, and making sure that you are putting out your the best foot possible or something that is showcaseable when you step on the field for these things is just imperative. It's a must, right? But let's take a step back. Let's go back into kind of the topic that we had to talk about. We'll talk about our preseason stuff a little bit. So like we were saying, guys, we're transitioning out of some of our maybe more maximal intensity lifts, but we always kind of run a system that isn't just straight like block periodization, right? So we rarely do we ever sit down and say, okay, the next 6 weeks is just going to be like a hypertrophy phase, right? We're always kind of melding some of those kind of classic periodization blocks together for our athletes to, like you said, try to fit what's going to work best for them in their schedule. And when we see athletes who are kind of on different timelines or different schedules, then we can get a little bit more maybe aggressive with some guys, and we got to pull back a little bit with others, just depending on when stuff is going to start, or what kind of cycle in their season that they're in, right? So not that we run straight block periodization, but we do use a lot of the tenets of block periodization, right? And so I think we still have, like when our guys right now are doing single leg work. So for example, they are doing reverse lunge work. It's still a pretty heavy load, right? Like we're looking for some dynamicness within that lower body movement, within that single leg movement, but we're still expecting loads to be moved, right? We're just maybe really leaning into the intent side, not the intensity and the intent, right? So we want them to try to finish that lift, that concentric action with as much kind of pop as they can, while still getting some of those higher intensity loads moved. So it's not like all of a sudden we come in here and no one's touching anything above 135 pounds as far as like barbell weight for, a myriad of the exercises that we use. But we are making sure that we are coaching intent. We are making sure that they understand, hey, season starts in 5 weeks. We need to make some adjustments in here with what we're doing, right? So I think communication is key. They understand that, and I love it when we get questions about it, right? Our guys should be that bought into the work that they're doing that they don't want to I don't want guys to just blindly follow, right, what we're doing. We want them to be so invested that they want to understand what's going on, understand what the changes that we're making in their programming is going to elicit for them as an athlete, like what kind of stimuluses we're trying to put on them. So then that's going to help them understand what's going on. And it just kind of makes this nice little circle of everybody that's in here kind of understands what's going on, right?
Yeah, definitely. And like, I like I like the point they made about like the buy-in part of it, because there are certain times of the year where what we're doing is like, I mean, and this is a prime example of like, why are we doing this, right? What is the point of what we're doing? And what we're going for, and that's where we're really transparent, really open and honest. Hey, we're going for a maximal speed, power, or speed strength movement, right? And whatever other factors along with that, right? So like we try to help them understand, because once they understand and they buy into it, it changes their perspective on what we're doing and how they attack that exercise. And a big thing that we're doing right now is a lot more contrast setting. Like, we'll do a split squat, or the simple one is we're doing split stance deadlift right now. Like we're talking about like a little more single leg work, and we're doing our split stance deadlift for a specific speed, and then we're doing a body weight jump or bound, for to be specific, and then a weighted um, body weight, a weighted plus body weight jump, and then a non body weight, I guess, where this get like a band assisted, where it's a supra maximal velocity component with it, right? And then that's kind of how we can, you know, navigate the waters of that graph I was talking about earlier, right? Where we are getting more into the speed strength side of it, right? And power, right? We're kind of in like a weird in betweeny, power speed strength phase right now. Like, and it's kind of a really fun phase. Because we're able to have guys move faster than they've ever moved before in certain exercises. And they're not feeling as like cooked after a lift. So then when they come in the next time, they're
Right.
like,
Yeah.
"Hey, I'm feeling good. Let's go. Like, come on. Like, time to move fast." And I mean, throughout the year too, we don't always move slow, like quote unquote slow with our movements. Like we still have certain, maximal velocity parts of
Right.
everything that we do. But right now we're starting to add more of the velocity component with it all. And that's been really fun. I love this part. I love the preseason phase because guys are getting more and more excited, more ramped up for the season and feeling like, hey, it's coming, it's coming. I'm feeling the effects of the last 3 or 4 months of our hard training, and I'm feeling like I'm moving faster. My body weight's up. I'm stronger. The ball's coming off the bat harder. Like I'm throwing it hard. Like you're starting to
Right.
hear and see a lot of these types of things, and it's really really fun as a coach to like have, because we see this stuff all the time, right? We see guys that are improving, right? And some other people, like the guys, actually don't always see it themselves, and now they're starting to see it themselves. And you get a little bit more, a little more smiles, a little bit better vibes sometimes, and they're just excited, and it's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun.
Right. Yeah, because I mean, I get as excited about strength number PRs as any coach out there, right? I think I got some meathead in me that I'm never going to get out, so I love that part of it. But man, there is nothing like watching a kid transform with his sprints, or watching a kid execute like a vertical jump that is just like, it's just pretty, it's aesthetic, it looks good to the eyes, right? And then some of the other like plyometric version or variations that we might be throwing at them, just watching them move in space and move athletically is like, that's it, right? And
Yeah.
sometimes when you're kind of in the slog of the late November, then we're trying to get through Christmas time, like that block stuff can get a little, for lack of a better term, grindy on the guys. Every single time, or at least a couple times a week, they're coming in here. They know it's gonna be kind of a knockout or knockdown drag out workout, and they're probably gonna feel like hell when they leave, and they're gonna make sure that their recovery protocols are dialed in so they can come back in the next day or 2 days later and do it again. Whereas, like you mentioned, right now there might still be a little bit of a component depending on kind of what we put as their finishers for that day, of like, man, I got heavy legs or something like that. For the most part, everything right now is, we're like charging the CNS. We're tapping into like high motor recruitment and stuff, but not for serious stretches of time where we're going to just drain it down to zero. And then again, watching them express themselves as athletes is like, I mean, there's nothing better. That's what we're here for, right? And then, like you said, the stories of, hey, I came in and almost all these guys have access to HitTrax or something, even if it's just a pocket radar, and they come in and they tell us, hey, exit velo's up, or whether we're doing the throwing stuff with the guys or whether it's guys who aren't. Now guys are starting to get arms ready to go, and hey, ball just feels good coming out of my hand, right? I feel like I'm ready. I feel stronger, more stable, like more prepared. And so it's those types of things, because at the end of the day, we got to keep the goal, right? I think maybe in our field, generally speaking, that can get lost a little bit. Sometimes everybody just wants to chase a record board number. They want to chase, 1,000-pound club, whatever their kind of like load goal might be. It's really easy to kind of get lost in the weeds with some of that stuff. But at the end of the day, those athletic components and blending everything together during like this time frame is truly what makes the difference, right? And is truly what's going to have carryover for those athletes when they step in between the lines for game number one of this spring season that's coming up. So keeping the goal and making sure that everything that we do in here is directed towards carryover, towards the goal of being a better baseball, softball player for the most part in our case. And it's just easy to get bogged down in some of the other stuff, and social media is all over the place. So guys are seeing what other people, their peers are doing, whether it's regionally or nationwide. And so it's like, man, that guy's deadlifting 500 pounds. Like, I need to do that. Well, that's good. I want the guys to be big and strong and like kind of have that swagger about them, but it can't be at the detriment of some of that other stuff we were talking about before, right? It can't be we're just going to lift for numbers and not worry about some of the athletic things that are going to actually have maybe a higher return on your investment than just arbitrarily deadlifting 500 pounds.
Yeah, and you kind of hit the nail on the head there, right? Like our goal, it is, you want a guy that gets bigger and stronger, right? But you want
Right.
him to get faster at the same time. And we want guys to chase that 500-pound deadlift. We want guys to chase whatever squat or split squat or bench press or rowing or chin up or whatever. We want them to chase those numbers, right? But we never want them to chase them at the detriment of their movement quality or at the detriment of their athletic ability.
Right.
And like there's a big phrase that I hear a lot right now. It's like you can be strong enough. And I firmly believe there is a strong enough for baseball, right? I'm never gonna say to a guy that can deadlift 500 pounds, hey, don't try to deadlift 600 pounds by this time next year. I'm not gonna say that, right? But
Mm-hmm.
maybe we gotta start shifting that focus, right? If you're really, really pissed strong, but you're not very reactive or quick, or your speed component isn't there, let's keep you at that strength at the very minimum and get you faster and more reactive, because that's probably where your missing link is. But the big thing that I always saw or I'd hear from coaches a lot is like, that guy's a physical guy, right? We want physical guys in this program. We want, physicality overall. And physicality is a
Mm-hmm.
bunch of different ways, right? It can be from a just bigger, stronger standpoint, but it can also be from a speed and how they move standpoint too, right? There's so many different aspects that come into it, right? You can have a team full of
Yeah.
6'4", 235-pound meatheads, but at the end of the day, if they can't throw a ball very well, or if they can't hit the ball very well, or throw or catch, at all, you're not working towards the goal that's at hand, right? And we always
Right.
talk about this too, like what's the goal, right? If your goal is to be as physically strong as possible, we can help you with that, right? But if your goal is to perform at the highest level you can for baseball and perform at the highest ability you can for baseball, right? That might not be your primary goal, right? Could that be a secondary or tertiary goal? 1,000%. I'm not taking that away at all, right? But
Mm-hmm.
our goal is to make you a better baseball player. And that's why we have seasons like right now with our preseason work, right? We're shifting the spectrum to that, speed, strength, and power output, because that's what's going to help translate to the baseball field right now, right? And
Right.
continue to do that. Because if we could continue doing our volume accumulation or heavy deadlifting right now if we wanted to, but will that make them better at baseball? I don't think that it will, because I think it'll put them in a, recovery deficit where they can't perform at the highest level they can. And it won't transition them into a phase where, hey, we need to start teaching you how to move powerfully and fast. Right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's almost like, it's almost like the last 3 months, and maybe this is why this is like, kind of our favorite part, because it's almost like the last 3 months have been, it's been leading up to this. We're at like the kind of, for our training year, we're kind of at the top of the pyramid, right? So everything that we've been doing is kind of culminating into this next 5 or 6 week window of putting all these little pieces together. And sometimes the guys look at us and they're like, we don't really understand how it all fits. We try to do our best to explain it, but it's like putting a puzzle together. And now all of a sudden you got like 2 or 3 more puzzle pieces that are left, and you can see the whole picture right there laid out in front of you. And it's like, oh, okay. And you kind of, it's fun to see the light bulbs kind of turn on with the guys, kind of like we were talking about before, when they come back and they're like, hey man, I've been hitting for a couple weeks, and dang, like the ball coming off my bat, that's different. Or the ball coming out of my arm, that's different. Or, we did home to first times, and I didn't think I was seeing that much progress in here with my sled sprinting, because, sometimes the changes made there are minimal. But but dang, I went home to first and I beat it by whatever the time was, right? And so it's like the pieces are starting to come together now, and this is a really just a really fun time of year for us. Also hectic because we're trying to keep everything straight, right? Like on our end, we got a lot of different athletes who are starting up maybe at different times. So, our youth guys might not start until April or something like that officially. The high school guys we know start at the beginning of March. The softball players that we have in, maybe their club season doesn't start until a little bit later. So there's a lot of moving pieces on our end. But again, it's culminating into this fun kind of 4, 5, 6 week stretch, and then eventually it's watching the guys go ball out on the field, right? And kind of let them, leave the nest, if you want to call it that, and go do their thing. And watching them have their successes on the field, knowing that maybe we're just a minuscule part of their successes is a really cool feeling. And really, I don't want to speak for you, but why I got into this in the first place, it was like baseball career ended, bam, I still want to be involved. How can I still be involved? And this is such a great way for us to be surrounded by some really motivated athletes, and then share in some of those successes that they have.
100%. And it's fun to you know, take a lot of the experiences that I had in my playing career, and a lot of the experiences you had in your playing career, and experiences we've found out from other people as well, and use that to kind of. There was a quote that I heard a while back, is like, coaches are the guys that made the mistakes and learned from it. So then the mistakes that they made and they learned from, they can help prevent you from making. And so you get that extra edge and you learn from their mistakes as well,
right,
instead of just your own. And I love that quote. I was just like, dang, that makes so much sense, right? And
right.
no, and then like you made a really good point about like putting the final pieces to that puzzle together. And I know we'll have a podcast coming up where we're going to talk about in-season training, but when we get to in-season training, it's like, hey, we got that puzzle and that picture's crystal clear, right? Like what we created is there, right? Now let's keep it and let's make it even better. Let's make it even better.
Right.
And that's, like I said, it'll be in a podcast coming up, and we'll talk about why it's important to maintain those pieces of the puzzle and keep it there, because the guys work so hard. The guys and girls work so hard this time of the year and throughout the year, and the last thing we want to see is them to lose their progress that they made overall. And that's why in-season training is so important. But preseason training is so much fun. You get to you're chasing different types of numbers with us, with some of our different tracking stuff, and that gets to be a lot of fun. And then guys compete too with it. Like, it's a different way of competing, because some guys are, because some guys are even, some guys can't lift as much as other guys, right? But they're able to lift the same weight at the same speed as a guy that might be able to deadlift 150 pounds more than the other guy, right?
Right.
And it's kind of fun to get a little bit of that banter back and forth between them. And it kind of lights a fire underneath the guy that might be stronger, like from actual pure strength standpoint. And there's a little bit of competition, and we get to do a little bit more fun type movements, right? I know, like, one of my favorite ones is like our band assisted push-ups, because it feels like you're just levitating, right? And those are always so much fun. And I remember hearing some guys talking about yesterday, they looked at their card and they're like, yo, I got band assisted push-ups today, let's go. And I was like, dude, I love to hear that, because that is one of my favorite exercises overall, even to continue doing myself.
Right.
And this stuff is so much fun. I love contrast setting stuff. I know when I first interned with you, I don't know how much you knew about like French contrasting and that type of stuff before then, but it's been a lot of fun to implement it with a lot of the stuff that we've been doing since I've been full time, and doing that whole summer lifting phase with you and Colton and Becca, and sometimes Kolar was a lot of fun. And you don't, and there's so much fun too, because you can lift heavy as crap and still reap a lot of benefits of the speed and power standpoint of it all too, right? I
Right.
love contrast setting, and it's so much fun, and guys, love it too. So
Well,
that's
yeah,
always
we,
icing on the cake.
because even when we were kind of testing some of that stuff on ourselves that summer that you were talking about, the feeling of athleticism is unmatched. It's such a good feeling, even if the hurdles weren't that high or the boxes weren't as high as what some of the athletes that we have doing, or whatever the case may have been. It's fun to move in that way sometimes, and I think sometimes the younger athletes take it for granted because they just always are moving that way. Every practice they have, they're sprinting all over the place, changing direction. They can swing as hard as they want. They don't have to worry about something going wrong. They can throw the ball as hard as they want for the most part. They don't have to worry about something going wrong. But for us old guys, me in particular, it's like sometimes that athleticism piece of your life goes away a little bit. And so in order to bring it back, I know I enjoyed bringing it back in. Uh, and then experimenting on ourselves a little bit before we try to implement some of it with our athletes is always a good move too. So we know what they're going through when they're grinding through that last set of their four set or their four exercise contrast, right? Their French contrast.
Yeah,
We can kind of be in their shoes a little bit. So yeah, it's good. It's a lot of fun right now. I think that's probably a good place to wrap, and we can call it a day on that one. But yeah, preseason training, we are kind of in the middle of it right now with 4 or so weeks left to go, and looking forward to getting these guys healthy and out on the fields, and hopefully catch some games this spring. And the next pod we'll be talking about some in-season training that we have up our sleeve and what we have planned for everybody when we get to that point.
definitely, definitely.
All
No, this
good?
is like we talked about a couple different times. This is a fun topic, and I like I like talking about different training cycles, and this is one of my favorite ones to talk about. It just gets to be a lot of fun. So,
Yeah, yeah, 100%.
but
100%. You got it, bro. Well, guys, thanks for joining. We'll be back next week with another topic. Okay. All right. Everyone, stay safe out there.
100%.
We'll see you later.
See you guys.